Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Mecca, the direction of prayer for all Muslims around the world. Every year, millions of pilgrims make their way to Saudi Arabia. Their destination, the Kaaba, the house of God. Rising next to the central shrine is an architectural masterpiece of the highest order, the tallest clock tower in the world.
If you build a clock tower in Mecca, you cannot just download a blueprint somewhere off the internet.
The massive construction project presents the engineers with an enormous challenge. With only 4 years to build it, the time frame is tight.
In the morning, if there's a revision, in the afternoon, it should be applied at site. The schedule is so tight.
Construction firms from 10 countries are taking part in this building project for Saudi Arabia. The design and the clock mechanism come from Germany.
As the dimensions grew bigger, we thought at first we must have got off at the wrong station, but eventually it turned into reality.
The huge clock mechanism drives a hand 23 meters in length, 98 million mosaic stones with 24-karat gold leaf, and 2 million LEDs adorn the outer facade. The highlight? The Hilal, a crescent at the tip of the tower with a prayer room inside.
We are in a height of 600 meters, and wind will be our biggest enemy.
A further complication the European construction companies have to contend with is that only Muslims can enter the construction area on the holy site. Only in the final stages of development does it become clear that the building exceeds all expectations and breaks over 30 world records. Flashback. King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud, Saudi Arabia's head of state and custodian of the 2 holy mosques, lays the cornerstone of a huge construction project. Upon an area of 1.7 million square meters, a hotel complex, together with businesses for over 30,000 pilgrims, must be in place. But that's not all. After workers have already begun construction, the client calls for an elaborate extension to the complex and the central tower, which will now rise to over 600 meters. The tallest clock tower in the world is born. The architecture firm SL Rasch near Stuttgart, Germany, received the contract from Saudi Arabia at a time no one expected.
In the late autumn 2006, at Christmas in fact, came a call from Saudi Arabia asking whether we could build a clock tower on top of the tower in Mecca.
The team has experience in the field of lightweight construction in Saudi Arabia, but what about a giant clock tower?
If you can't imitate, you need to demonstrate. And if you have to start from scratch, you need to turn for guidance, and that's what science is for.
The firm pitched 107 design ideas for the client to choose from. But is the construction project achievable?
There were sleepless nights while these issues remained unsolved. Your mind goes in circles until you have a solution.
The problem is that the clock tower cannot weigh more than 82,000 tons, the weight at which the maximum load-bearing capacity of the foundation is reached. The construction workers are already working 24/7. Structural engineer Guido Ludischer searches for a solution that offers optimal weight distribution.
The challenge for us was to raise a high-rise building designed to be 450 meters high to up to over 600 meters. This was only possible using a highly efficient steel construction.
The Eiffel Tower served as a model to the engineers, a steel composite construction capable of bearing and evenly distributing all the weight. But who can build the frame in a location that only Muslims can enter?
Mecca and Medina are called the Haramain, the 2 forbidden cities. They are closed to non-Muslims, but there are 1.5 billion Muslims in the world, so you're sure to find someone for everything.
The architect gets a lucky break. A steel company manufactures the parts in Turkey and installs the supports on site in Saudi Arabia. a sigh of relief back in Germany, but project leader Orkun Sarisoy has an enormous challenge ahead of him.
In this project, when the designer, the engineer, finalizes his drawing, there is no time frame between this completion and to start fabrication and to have the material installed.
The production volume is vast. The Turkish supplier must provide 1,000 tons of steel a month. To achieve this, over 300 employees work in shifts around the clock. With these quantities, there is no room to lose track of production.
There are 11,000 structural steel elements. Each one is unique for us. So to track out for each piece and location and the progress status of each pieces, we established a barcode system.
Each part has a unique number, the steel nodes as well. But before the supports leave the factory, the quality control takes place. The 18-ton steel giant will later bear loads of 40 meganewtons, the weight of 500 trucks. Even the finest hairline crack could have fatal consequences, and the team cannot allow any mistakes.
You have the design, engineering, fabrication, transportation, and installation as well. So in the morning, if there's a revision, in the afternoon, it should be applied at site. The schedule is so tight.
The total cost of the clock tower amounts to an estimated $2 billion. The architects have a 4-year deadline to increase its height from 450 to 600 meters. Site manager Mohammed Afana has to ensure work proceeds according to the strict schedule. He now waits for the nodes from Turkey. Logistics was one of the major challenges in the King Abdulaziz Endowment project, and in particular in the clock tower, because of the scale of the project and its location next to the Haram. During his daily inspection of the site, Mohammed Afana scrutinizes each stage of construction in detail. Every day, the site manager has to contend with greater heights. The King Abdulaziz Endowment project was challenging because of its height, and in particular the height of the Mecca clock, especially its location next to the Haram, and also the 5 prayer times, Ramadan and the Hajj season. There are more than 1.5 billion Muslims worldwide. Once in their lifetime, believers are obliged to make the journey of Hajj to Mecca. This traditional pilgrimage is one of the 5 pillars of Islam enshrined in the Holy Quran. Each year, over 3 million believers travel to the holy site. The starting point is the Al-Masjid Al-Haram Mosque. Within lies the central shrine, the house of God. For centuries, Muslims all around the world have directed their prayers towards the Kaaba. In the circumambulation ceremony, the Tawaf, pilgrims circle the Kaaba 7 times. This act is a very traditional form of prayer. After this ritual, the pilgrims move to Mount Arafat, 20 kilometers away from Mecca. On the Mount of Mercy, the Prophet Muhammad gave his last sermon in 632 AD. Believers remain on the hill and beg God for forgiveness. Next stop, Mina, and the largest tent city in the world. Here there are over 100,000 tents with air conditioning, electricity, and room for several million people. Pilgrims stay for 3 days and carry out a symbolic stoning of the devil on Jamarat Bridge. The Hajj finally ends with the circumambulation of the Kaaba in Mecca. This is the high point for many Muslims and a challenge to every project manager because construction workers must not disturb prayer.
كان في برج الساعة عندنا إحنا 7 رافعات برجية.
7 tower cranes were installed in the clock tower in order to complete the project as quickly as possible.
We are in a very, very hard situation, the crane locations are fixed. You cannot change the capacity of the crane. You cannot change the location of the crane. So the only thing that you can play with is the configuration of the steel structure.
The size and weight of every individual construction part is calculated precisely. Eventually, all the support elements arrive from Turkey. The weight of the node shows the limits of the crane.
The heaviest one is 18 tons, which is at the limit of the crane capacity.
18 tons. At this weight, the skills of the crane operator are critical. He requires a steady hand to bring the extremely heavy part into place with millimeter accuracy. Meanwhile, in Germany, thoughts turn to the drive and mechanism of the giant clock tower.
We looked through the yellow pages of the Stuttgart telephone directory to see if there was a tower clock specialist in the region. We found a firm called Perrot in Calw.
The Swabian town of Calw is home to one of the world's leading clock tower manufacturers. What began 150 years ago with clocks for village churches has now become an international business. Senior Director Heinrich Perrot had worked on a number of large-scale projects, but this assignment took even his breath away.
The first question he asked us was, can you build us a clock tower 16 meters in diameter? Sure, we said. Then came the next request. Could you build one 25 meters in diameter? Sure, we can do that too. As the dimensions grew and grew, we thought at first we had got off at the wrong station, but then it turned out we hadn't.
Junior manager Andreas Perrot must take a measurement first. Is it possible to even build a clock tower that's 35 times bigger than Big Ben in London?
This clock is by far the tallest in the whole world. We couldn't refer back to anything. We were in completely new territory.
The architects examine the aerodynamic characteristics of the clock tower. They want to know what kind of wind forces will act upon the giant clock face. The results show that with winds of 200 kilograms per square meter come forces of 300 tons. This amounts to a weight equal to 10 trucks. At these speeds, the clock hands will shake. A dangerous risk in a clock tower 500 meters high. The team must also consider sudden changes in weather patterns. In addition to scorching desert heat, Mecca is also subject to torrential rains and thunderstorms. But how do you fix and secure a clock hand to withstand climatic conditions?
There was a lot of discussion, an external drive or an internal drive. We thought up a variety of concepts for the clock drive. Initially, we mounted the clock hands in the middle and fixed them at the periphery to a cart that then travelled round in a circle.
But this system carried a risk. The drive requires maintenance.
The challenge was driving the hands from the center. This way the drive would last for decades, even possibly centuries. You don't want anything that's designed for 3 years and then that's just thrown away.
The result of their research led to the biggest and strongest clock mechanism in the world. The cogs of the giant central drive are made from a special hardened bronze. The material is extremely tough, highly robust, offers outstanding gliding properties, and has a long lifespan. Ideal characteristics for use in Mecca. The blacksmith pours the material into a mold and then shapes the part in a press until the casting is 1.4 meters in diameter. Once the bronze is cured, it can be further treated. On the lathe, the 1,000-kilogram heavy component receives its final touches. The milling machine ensures the perfect finish. The clock mechanism should provide a reliable time for over 100 years. Even the space between the cogs affects the figure up to the decimal point.
The special moment in the production process was when the base and the shafts were brought together. For us, this was like a wedding.
An emotional experience for the clockmakers from Calv. Are all the calculations correct? Do the components fit together? The first test in the production shop will tell, and a high-ranking visitor is due. The first clock mechanism is there. All the components are installed. The drive weighs in at an impressive 21 tons, a masterpiece of German engineering ingenuity. The moment of truth for Heinrich Perrott and his team has arrived. The clock mechanism is powered up for the first time. But the drive is not set up in Mecca yet. On site, the engineers are busy building the steel construction. The steps of the stairway have arrived. They are intended for the north side. To save weight, many steel elements are not bolted but welded. For the erection of the clock tower on the construction site, there are 80 designated welders alone and 304 constructional steel workers.
All the working places are dangerous. If you do not get the required precautions, everywhere is dangerous.
A balancing act at heights of over 450 meters. The safety of the workers always takes precedence. Every worker on site is equipped with a safety cable. At the same time in Germany, design renderings are made for the outer facade of the clock tower. Teamwork is required.
The entire design came about in close collaboration with the clients. Lots of people contributed their ideas. As the saying goes, two heads are better than one.
The designers place an emphasis on traditional forms and modern design. Efdaluddin Kilic from Istanbul is one of the best calligraphers in the world. He creates drafts for the huge ornament. The script Allahu Akbar, God is great, and the Islamic creeds are inherent features of the Adhan, the daily call to prayer. What the calligrapher puts on paper appears 100 times bigger above the faces of the clock tower. The letter Alif alone is 23 meters long. The outer facade consists of carbon fiber components, a giant puzzle made of 170 parts on each side. Dubai. In the heart of the desert metropolis, Yahya Hannes Weimer produces the panels for the clock.
Mr. Weimer began experimenting with carbon fiber on a small shipyard on Lake Constance. Of course, he was always building racing boats too. He knows his way around carbon fiber in a similar way to a carpenter with wood.
Being involved in the Mecca clock tower, it's like sailing, participating in a regatta. You always have to give your last gram of energy.
The client from Saudi Arabia ordered over 600 different exterior elements. The team produced the ornament from large blocks of styrofoam.
Our milling machine is running 24 hours, 7 days a week, just to produce enough molds.
With the molds finished, glass fiber composite material is applied. Glass fiber is one of the most important construction materials used today. It is fire-resistant and weatherproof. The team impregnates the material with epoxy resin and applies it evenly to the entire surface, strip by strip, layer by layer. Once the material has cured, the mold can no longer be altered. The men sand the surface by hand so that the adhesive sticks.
The next big challenge after that was to put 20 by 20 millimeter big mosaic tiles onto 60,000 square meters of composite cladding.
The glass mosaic goes on the outer facade. The client has commissioned 98 million pieces in 13 different colors. Nearly 1/3 of the glass tiles contains 24-karat gold leaf and is intended for the emblems and the ornaments. The city of Venice boasts centuries' worth of experience in the field of mosaic production. For 1,000 years, the Italian province on the Adriatic Sea has been laboriously manufacturing colorful glass mosaics by hand. The bright glass tiles withstand extreme heat and are also highly robust. The secret is 2 layers of glass, which protect the fine gold leaf from external forces. The Italians have only 1 year to make 98 million tiles. In Pino Bisazza's mosaic factory, producing a volume of this kind is unthinkable using traditional manufacturing methods.
This is how we came to develop an automated production system, which allowed us to deliver the supplies for the clock tower.
The Italian upgrades his system. Ancient traditional handicraft meets state-of-the-art 21st century technology.
For the Mecca clock project, we produced around 12,000 square meters of gold mosaic. I must say this was the largest glass mosaic order ever placed in our sector.
Only completely flawless components are installed on the outer facade of the clock tower. The rest is scrap. The hand-picked mosaic tiles are arranged by color. The men fix the tiles to the roughened surface using special industrial glue. Each section of the external facade has an individual pattern. The designers send the layout from Germany. In Dubai, over 100 workers ensure the design is completed on time. That means arranging, gluing, and polishing like on an assembly line. And while the panels shine like new in the desert state, the convoy transporting the largest clock mechanism in the world is on its way towards the center of the holy site. Only Muslims can enter Mecca, which is a major challenge to clockmaker Andreas Perrott from Germany. He stays in touch with the trained installation team on the site via telephone.
It was tough for me that I couldn't be there while the clock mechanism was installed. There was a certain amount of tension to see how the rest of the operation would be carried out.
The German engineer relied on the Turkish installation crew of Orkun Sarısoy.
The installation of each clock mechanism takes 1 day. This is a very, very tight duration for these mechanisms because during the installation of these mechanisms, we stop the whole site.
A state of emergency in Mecca. The construction site is at a standstill.
It was very important for the overall project. And the mechanism is very important because it is one of the reasons of this clock tower.
The clock drive weighs a full 21 tons. The problem is that the crane on the main tower can only lift 18 tons. The team must dismantle the pre-assembled drive into 2 pieces. And time is short.
We reserved a slot for this project, which cannot be interrupted.
The base alone weighs 10 tons, a frame as heavy as a tank. By working together, the men bring the giant heavyweight into position. The correct position is crucial because the enormous weight of the drive affects even the structural strength of the building. The procedure won't allow for any errors. Meanwhile, in Germany, the clockmaker feels the tension and waits anxiously for news from Mecca.
The installation of the clock drive on site is a special moment. It felt as if I couldn't be there for the birth of my own daughter.
The main section is still missing, the drive shaft. The crane operator lifts the drive over the base. From here on, it's precision and sheer muscle strength that matter. Centimeter by centimeter, the men lower the drive over the thread. Accuracy is called for, as the clearance between the worm drives is 0.1 millimeters.
I had an agreement with Dr. Rasch telling him that he can call me 24/7.
The team is under pressure. The longer installation of the clock drive takes, the longer the construction site is at a standstill. And that doesn't just cost precious time, but also money.
Making the right decision at the right time when you're not on site is a real challenge.
A chain link has jammed and moves with a sudden jerk. The team inspects the clock drive, but there is nothing to see. The last-minute shock has been felt. The men lower only the main section very, very carefully. And it's in place. Finally, a sigh of relief in Germany.
Around 1:30 at night, I got a call saying the clock drive was in place and everything was okay. With that, I could go to bed in peace. The most important characteristic of a clock tower is first, that you can read the time. Second, that you can see it from afar. And third, that you can see it clearly.
And that is what scientist Christian Bartenbach from Innsbruck, Austria is responsible for. The tallest clock in the world should also be legible by night.
When you analyze the issue as per usual in research and development, you often just come to more questions. With every answer, you get 5 new questions.
The researchers perform a field test. Should it be a white, blue, or green background? Which clock face is readable both day and night from a distance of 500 meters? A white clock face offered the best performance in daylight. The surprise was that by night, the best color was green.
The question of why green is better than blue lies in the eye's accommodation and its physiological characteristics. With red light, you always have a slightly long-sighted appearance, while with blue light, it's a little short-sighted. In a normal pair of eyes, it's green light that appears sharpest on the retina.
The lighting concept is finalized. But how do you bring this display of colors to life? The team consults one another. In the meantime, the panels have arrived at the construction site in Mecca. At the same time, the manufacturers have arrived as well.
If you look at the first part we installed on site was the north Haram-facing clock face. And we have about 170 parts, and each part has a number, and it's like a puzzle. It only fits together in the right sequence.
The men have to tackle the giant puzzle, piece by piece. It must be installed vertically. The architect Mahmoud Bodo Rasch and Yahia Hannes Weimer personally want to make sure that nothing goes wrong. They keep an eye on the construction workers. The clock face is 43 meters in diameter. Half of it is completed. But the most important elements of a giant clock tower are still missing. The hands.
The hands are made of carbon fiber and are stiff like an airplane wing.
The longest hand is 23 meters in length. But in a clock of this size, it's not just about length. The weight of the hand is also crucial. Yahia Hannes Weimer from Dubai has faith in carbon.
If you look at the new Airbus A380 wing, is entirely built out of carbon fiber. This is the material of the future.
The carbon fiber reinforced plastic, also known as carbon, is lighter than aluminum and is also extremely strong. Perfect characteristics for use here in Mecca.
The biggest clock hand is 23 meters long, and the composite weight itself is about 2 tons of carbon fiber composite laminate.
The hour hand is 17 meters long. The men bring the two halves of the hands together and glue them with carbon fiber.
The biggest challenge was that the clock had to be visible and readable both day and night, and from a great distance. We did this by installing LEDs.
Over 2 million LEDs illuminate the clock tower. With a production volume of this size, many of the assembly steps were automated. This machine is more accurate than any human being. It produces the glass covers for the outer facade. More than 3,000 units roll over the conveyor belt every hour. The soldering in the LEDs is laboriously carried out by hand. The firm employs over 100 staff for this intricate task. Before the LEDs leave the production shop, employees scrutinize each and every diode. But will all the lights also light up on opening day? In Dubai, the carbon fiber minute hand receives its final touches. The installation crew incorporates the nearly 20,000 LEDs. For perfect contrast, the space between the LEDs is exactly 10 centimeters. All that is missing now are the colorful mosaic tiles. The minute hand is 23 meters long and weighs in at 6 tons. But how do you move something this massive? The steel carriage suddenly buckles. It's too long and too heavy. No one expected this. Now everyone has to pitch in. Working together, the men heave the giant hand out of the shop. The problem is that the distance to the neighboring buildings is far too short. The giant has to be canted onto one side. The team must think of something quickly. They open the gate on the opposite side to free the clock hand from its awkward position. But the next challenge already awaits them.
One of the challenges, of course, is to transport it. So we had to organize special trucks.
The convoy carrying the world's largest clock hand makes its way from Dubai to Mecca. It has taken almost 3 days for the heavy transport trucks to make the 2,000-kilometer journey through the desert.
The clock hand was quite a big task. A lot of the client representatives were there. Everybody was on the roof watching us and our people lifting this huge piece.
2 professional riggers guide the hand into a vertical position for installation to the clock drive. As soon as the tip has sunk in, the mounting brackets on the thread must be tightened.
There was actually quite a lot of wind, and it was like borderline, do we continue or not? We decided to continue. I personally maybe wouldn't hang on that rope.
The hand is barely controllable. The team must wait for the wind to die down. A waiting game at a height of around 500 meters. The hand is freely suspended. The rest is taken care of by the crane operator.
Everybody was relieved, the client was very happy, the engineers were very happy, and specifically us, we were very happy because we built it, and if we would have made a mistake, it would have been a big problem for us.
After the difficulties with the hour hand, the team has gained more valuable experience. Installation of the minute hand is easy in comparison. The very same night, installation of the remaining panels on the dial facing north begins. Because of the extreme winds 500 meters above the ground, the clock faces are all concave. This improves their aerodynamics considerably.
This was a major moment in the project for us because the first clock out of 4 was completed.
After intense planning, preparation and production, the tallest clock tower in the world in Mecca slowly takes shape. But what time should the clock show?
This was a new question. When you build a clock tower in Mecca, which time should it use? Then came the idea of installing an atomic clock. This would be the Mecca time.
5 cesium clocks at the heart of the tower generate a time signal so precise that 1 second's deviation is expected only every 3 million years. From measurements taken from the 70 time institutes worldwide, the Bureau International des Poids et Mesures in Paris, BIPM for short, generates the world time. It is crucial for telecommunications and for international air traffic. Establishing a connection to this time network is the responsibility of Sami Kadem from Germany.
I think we'll be quite busy this night and tomorrow also, and I hope then we have this thing done.
The sensitive cesium clocks must not be subjected to power failures and changes in temperature. An error in the system could affect the time signal by a millisecond. Physicists must ensure that the electrical equipment is reliable.
We are connected to some backup power systems. We have here additionally 3 air condition systems. 2 of the 3 systems are always working, and if one fails, then the 3rd system can take over.
The moment of truth in the control room behind the clock tower has arrived. The Time Institute in Mecca sends its first signal to the BIPM in Paris. From now on, the reference time informs Muslims from all over the world precisely when it's time for daily prayer. Construction is in its final stages. The 4 clock faces, complete with hands, have been installed. The hotel complex at the center of the holy site is nearly finished as well.
Our aim from the day one is to climb up at this height with structural steel.
The building now towers over 580 meters into the air. Here, the welders make their final seams. There is relief amongst the engineers.
You can feel the height, you can feel the excitement, you can feel the honor of the success.
The huge construction project is almost completed. There are just a few weeks now until the opening. The construction workers have had to work for months in intense heat and at dizzying heights. For them too, the objective is within reach. The design should do justice to this holy location.
Every mosque has a minaret, and the minarets of the mosque in Mecca everybody knows. So I would say the tower clock is the minaret of Mecca.
Every mosque is adorned with the symbol of the Prophet, the Hilal, a crescent. This extremely heavy construction now needs to be installed on the spire.
When we install the Hilal, this will be the highlight and the cream on the cake, and it will be also the most difficult part of the whole job.
The last test installation in Dubai before the crescent begins its journey to Mecca. The Hilal is unique in its construction. The centerpiece of the tower is clad in gold mosaic tiles. Inside, there is a prayer room, which will later be enthroned on the building at a height of 600 meters.
The Hilal is a 25-meter big structure, and of course we cannot transport a 25-meter diameter piece on the road, so we had to subdivide the Hilal into 11 pieces.
And as the heavy transport truck carrying the crescent reaches Mecca, Mustafa Rasch observes the final stages of work before the opening. The glass cladding of the facade is still missing, and the countdown is on.
There was a particular moment that I really looked forward to, and that was the end of the inauguration.
Hard work for the riggers who have never toiled at such dizzying heights.
Well, the whole thing was extremely difficult because it was enormous time pressure.
The opening is drawing near. The men must install over 2 million LEDs in record time. It's still unknown whether the lighting concept is right or whether all the LEDs will actually work on the day of the opening. The first test is a success. Nervous tension before the last important stage of construction. The golden crescent must be installed at a height of 600 meters. Several riggers are ready for action.
Then you drop down your lines, okay? And the guys controlling it.
The team is tense. The wind is blowing unusually hard today.
The crane's capacity was maxed out. We simply couldn't have lifted another 200 kilograms more.
We don't have a lot of possibilities to control the part when we lift it, and wind will be our biggest enemy.
Wind strength reaches a critical level. The part begins to rotate and proves hard to control. Anxious moments for the workers inside the crescent. The wind continues to blow non-stop. The installation is in danger of failure. The only solution is to get the men on the viewing platform to stabilize the part with ropes and sheer brute force. A massive show of strength. Precision work at 600 meters in the air. And then, finally, it's done. The part can be bolted down. The wind recedes. Once the tip of the moon is in place, work is completely finished. A final check by all those involved. And from this moment on, the intense pressure of the last years is gone.
I'm happy.
And the architect is also pleased.
Of course, it's a relief when it's up there. It wasn't clear right up until the final hours whether the crane would be able to do it.
A giant crescent is enthroned over the holy site. With its completion, yet another world record has fallen. The highest prayer room in the world now sits over Mecca. After years of construction, the huge tower is finished. The giant 43-meter wide clock faces alone are visible from a distance of 8 kilometers. The clock tower of Mecca, an architectural masterpiece.
How the idea developed and came to life is really astonishing.
Religion meets science. Mecca is the heart and the direction of prayer. It is the place to which the hearts of all believers yearn to go. Thousands of pilgrims descend on the center of the holy site for the opening of the complex. From now on, the Mecca clock tower provides Muslims all over the world with the exact time. All the religious acts are related to time. Our prayers, Hajj, Zakat, and all the actions in our lives are performed at specific times. The modern design is inspired by the traditional Arabic art of ornamentation. The Mecca clock has become a minaret for the entire city and its surroundings. It's a modern milestone that we can feel proud of. But an important test is still pending. Will the German engineering masterpiece win over the Saudi Arabian head of state and custodian of the two holy mosques, King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Al Saud? Will the lights turn on? Decision Day in Mecca. Your Highness, custodian of the two holy mosques, King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the Mecca clock project has been completed. It includes 4 clocks on all 4 sides of the tower and the King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz Center for Crescent Observation and Astronomy. We ask Your Highness to inaugurate the clock project and announce the establishment of the Mecca time. In the name of God the Beneficent, the Merciful, with God's blessing. Work is completed. After 4 years of construction, the world's tallest clock tower stands in Mecca. The Hilal at the top of the tower shines in bright gold. The prayer room inside the crescent is reserved for a few high-ranking dignitaries. But for all pilgrims in Mecca, it is known that prayers in the holy city count 100,000-fold. This makes the clock tower not only a triumph of science and engineering, but also a new and profound religious symbol for Muslim believers worldwide.